What's up, ladies and gentlemen, fellow patriots? How y'all doing this evening? We're in central Missouri right now. Big town of Boonville, Missouri. We've come on here today and talk about employment, applying for jobs and such. Now, when you're applying for a job, you're filling out your application, submitting your resume, stuff like that, right? So then prospective employers are going to be contacting your former employers, right? Now, I don't know if it's all states are like that or if it's like federal law, but I know in Missouri that there's a law where a former employer, all they can do is confirm that you once worked there, your position, how long you worked there, and whether or not you're eligible for rehire, right? That's the law in Missouri, from what I know. Now, you think you would expect that employers are obeying that law. But I'm going to tell you something. They're not obeying that law. I know firsthand, in my opinion anyways. So I'm going to give you a little brief history. I worked at this place for 3 years. It was in Columbia. It's a manufacturing plant, right? So I had a falling out with them, you know, over all things, breaks, lunch, and stuff like that. Because it was my turn. It was time for lunch, right, for me. And I paged the supervisor once, went back to my station. They never showed up. So I go back again, I paged them a second time. They never showed up. So I'm like, okay, I'm not on an actual assembly line. I'm making a part. And I was caught up. So I was like, I'm going to go to lunch. Excuse me. So I got food allergies. So I go to lunch, and I'm sitting at the table in the break room, and this other supervisor comes in, and he sits down at a table a ways away from me, right? But he didn't say nothing, and I just kept eating my lunch, taking my lunch. So then, I finished my lunch and everything. As I'm going back, he approaches me, and he's talking about, you know, the fact that I went to lunch and nobody was there. So I told the guys, like, hey, I paged this person 1 time, 2 times, and they didn't come. So nobody came. So I went to take my lunch. And then I further went on to state that if I was one of his boys, we wouldn't be having this discussion, you know. So then right off the bat, you know, it's like he took it as me saying that he was racist. And so before he said anything else, he said, we're going to HR. That's what he said. I was like, okay, let's go. So we go to HR. HR lady asked me if I meant what I said, you know. I says, well, I was like, I said it, and I believe it was true. if I was one of his boys, wouldn't be having this discussion. So the talk with the HR person continued on, right? And so they just continued this talking and everything. So I was like, you know what? I was just, to myself, I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to be a part of a company that's going to treat their employees like that, you know. So I'm out of here. And so I resigned, handed my ID in and everything, and left. Now, at that point in time, I was working 2 jobs, right? One in the daytime, and then the other one was second shift, so it was after the first job. And so I was really wanting to get on full time at this second job because it was a hell of a place to work. It would have been a hell of a place to work. And so I put my time in there, and then a little bit later, months later, I applied for a position there within that company, the good company. So I filled out that application, and everything progressed good. They liked me a little bit, but this was before the interview. I liked them, so they set up this interview. So they interviewed with a group of people. There was several that was interviewing me, right? like the hiring team. So I was sitting there and talking to them, and you know, talking about this and employment history and whatnot. And then the question came up. Of all questions, I've never been asked that before in an interview. They said, "How do you prefer your breaks?" And so I asked for clarification, because I'm like, that's kind of an odd thing to ask somebody in an interview. How do you prefer your breaks? And so I followed up with them and asked them for clarification. And so then they come around and they said, do you prefer, when it comes to breaks and lunches and stuff, do you prefer to go at a specific time, right? Or can you go whenever? You know, it doesn't matter what time you go to break, just as long as you get a break. And so my response to that question is I'll do whatever that team does, whatever department you're in, whatever that team does, that's what I do. It doesn't matter. I'm happy either way, right? And so it still wasn't good enough for them. That answer to that question wasn't good enough for them. They kept harping on that, on breaks. Okay, says, no, we want to know what's your preference. And so that was my answer. I'm like, it's whatever the team does. It's not important. You know, just as long as I know what it is, I don't have no problem with it. But anyways, that answer for them wasn't good enough. So they, needless to say, I didn't get that job. So ask yourself this, right? What possessed that company? Those people that was interviewing, me. What possessed them to focus on breaks? You know, out of all things, you're going to focus on when I want to take a break. I'm going to tell you how. Why they focused on that. That's because Company A broke the law. That's what they did. They broke the law, and they told the second company, Company B, Company A told Company B about the issue that we had, the company and myself, with the brakes, and how the supervisor wouldn't get off her freaking ass and come give me my lunch. You know, eventually you got to everybody else got a lunch, so you should be able to get a lunch, right? That's what I'm thinking. So, but anyways, you ask yourself why that company focused on those brakes so hard. I mean, they were on it. They was not going to rest until they had their answer. But I didn't give it to them. He didn't give them that specific answer. I want my brakes at this time, or I don't care when my brakes are. You know, I just kept to the script that it depends on what the team does. But needless to say, I didn't get that job. And like I said a minute ago, that's because Company A told Company B what the problem was. That's a fact. So then, you fast forward some years, and so by this time I'm at a different company, and I'd been there quite a long time, and you know it run its course. For some reasons I was ready to go. Well, I'll tell you right now, fell off a ladder, fractured my hip, and I wasn't ready to go back to work at the time. So I just resigned. I said I retired. But anyways, in the meantime, I applied at Company B from the previous topic. I applied for that company again. And so then, when I go through the process, I have that interview. Fill out the resume, do their test, and they contact me back and say that they would like to interview me for a position. So I was like all excited and everything. So now company B from before becomes company. We'll say company. We'll keep on Company B. Company A changes. How about that? Company A changes, and Company B remains the same. So I'm in the interview with Company B, right? And so their question is how do you deal with conflict, right? And so I'm like, every company has different processes when dealing with things. They have different philosophies. Some of them want you to go to the supervisor with if you're having a problem with somebody, and then others prefer for you to try to work them out yourself or get a third party. And that's the way the new Company A was. Their thing was, hey, if you got a problem with somebody, give them that feedback, try to work things out, and then go from there. And then if you can't, then you try that third person, and if that don't resolve your problem, then you go to the boss, supervisor, or whatever, HR. And so that's the program that they had, and that's what I was telling Company B. I said, it depends on what's the company's policy. Whatever that company's policy is, that's what I'll follow. When they ask about conflict, I'm like, I can think of one time I had an issue with somebody. We had a disagreement, and so what we done is we went and got a third party. And then we had both agreed that whatever that third party was going to say, that's what we would abide by. And that's what we did. End of story. There's no problem there. But they kept harping on how you resolve conflict. Now, I've talked to people, and their first thing is they say, you don't admit that you've been in conflict, because companies, they don't want that. You know, they want to believe that everything's just hunky dory. But I'm going to tell you something. If a person goes to a job interview and they're asked, have you had a problem with a coworker? Have you had an issue with a coworker? And I'm going to tell you something. And this is my personal opinion, and I believe it, and nobody's going to convince me otherwise. Everybody who's had a job, and particularly in a factory setting, has had some type of conflict, some type of disagreement with their coworkers. That's a fact. And to say otherwise, you're lying. Right? So basically what you got to do is, when you go to these interviews, they force you to lie, because if they're going to hold the fact that you had some conflict with somebody, you had a disagreement with somebody, if they're going to hold that against you, then they're forcing you to lie. Because everybody has had a conflict with a coworker, a disagreement. And I don't care what anybody says. It's fact. And you can try to say it if you want. Maybe you didn't have no conflict, but you've had a coworker that's made you mad because of what they've done. So, you know, it's conflict. You have a beef with somebody. And that's truth. You just got to be honest. And companies should let you be honest when they ask you a question. If I was hiring somebody and they told me that they didn't have no conflict, I would tell them you're lying. Right then and there in the interview, I would tell them, I'd be like, I don't believe it. I was like, we work together and we have problems. Because you're human. You're human, folks. So you're going to have problems. So anyways, they kept harping on that conflict thing. Now, Company A, when I left them, there was some issues, and I'm not going to go into details, but there were issues. And I mean, I didn't get fired. I left on my own accord. I just said, I'm done, retired. So, and I don't have no ill feelings toward them. But there's only one way that Company B had any inclination to ask me about conflict. One reason and one reason only, in my opinion. That's because Company A told Company B that there was issues with me and conflict. You know? So what would have been fair, but they couldn't do it because they know it's breaking the law. But what would have been fair is if they would have said, hey, you know, we spoke with Company A, and Company A gave this version of what it was like to have you working for them. And this is what they said. And we would like to give you the opportunity to share your side. To share your side. That would have been the fair thing to do. You know? But like I said, they can't do it, because if they did, then it would show me, it would prove to me that, hey, Company A was telling Company B stuff that they shouldn't have been telling them to begin with. And that's a fact. Now, I want you to check this out. Okay, I had to switch hands because my arm's hurting. I want you to check this out. So recently, I started applying for jobs again. You know, it's time to get back in that saddle and, you know, build that bank account back up. So I started applying for jobs again. And keep in mind now, all these companies that I've been referencing, they're all within the same area, the same vicinity, walking distance, you know. So I applied for another company. And we'll say that this company is C, right? Company C. I applied at Company C. First, I applied for a supervisor's position. Because right now I'm not broke, but I want to try to line up a job. So I'm thinking, hey, you know, why not roll the dice? Maybe they'll get me in there and they interview me and they'll like what they see. Because if you interview good, you got a good chance to get a job. No matter if it's for a supervisor job or whatever. So this position I was applying for was a supervisor, right? So this company sends me an email back, and it was stating something about how they wasn't quite ready to fill the supervisor. They were still, you know, working things out on the supervisor position, interviewing people. And so then they asked me if I would consider maintenance. They said, would you consider a maintenance job? I'm trying to get better lighting, so here we go. There you go, that's some good lighting. The sun's going down. So they asked me if I would consider a maintenance position, which I have experience as a maintenance mechanic. Okay, so it's logical that they're going to ask that. So I sent them back an email, and I was like, sure, I'll consider that. And so in the process, in that same email that they sent me, they said, if you are, then apply for that position. Resubmit your application for that position, for maintenance mechanic position. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. Now, so I go through all that process, and then they call me up. Well, first they set up a time for a phone interview. And so then that time comes for the phone interview. We're having a good discussion. I'm sharing my skills, what I've done, you know, bragging about how long I've worked at certain companies, because there's been two of them that I worked a long time for, you know. So and that's something to be proud of. So anyways, talking about that, and so when I was getting close to the end of this discussion, I said, I reiterated the fact that, hey, I want to be able to have, just have the opportunity. That's not saying I gotta have a supervisor job no matter what. You know, that's not what I was saying. What I'm saying is when a person says opportunity, that means you want to have the opportunity to come in, hey, prove my worth. I said, I want that opportunity to do that, either a supervisor, or I'd even think about quality control, because those are two things I have never done. You know, I haven't been in quality control. So those two things would interest me. And so I was reiterating this to the person as we were being interviewed. And so then they said, well, I'll hand this information off to the maintenance team, and then they'll look it over or whatever, and then we'll go from there. So I'm like, okay. So then I get an email back that says, I'm sorry, we're no longer interested in you filling our maintenance position. And then in that same email it says, however, it's not verbatim, but in the email they're telling me that, however, you can apply for a production job, and then then you could still concentrate on your goal of being either a supervisor or quality control. Right? So I was flabbergasted. I'm like, who does that? You telling somebody that you want to advance within their company, and they're holding that against you? Who does that? I've never heard of being. I said that in an email I sent back to him. I was like, I've never had a company that holds that against you for wanting to advance. Never. Who does that? So I sent him an email back. That's what I told him. I was like, that's the first time I've ever been penalized for wanting to advance. And I also included in the email, because I'm the type of person, I'm going to respond. I'm going to say something. Because that's just my nature. It's my nature. So in the email, that same email, I explained to him, hey, I applied for a supervisor's position first. That was what I first applied for. So then right then and there, I'm telling you, hey, this is what I'm interested in. Then you, company C, looked at my resume and stuff, and you seen that I had maintenance experience. So you thought, hey, well, let's reach out. Let's see if we can get him in for a maintenance thing. You reached out to me knowing that that's what my goal was for supervisor. That's what I was wanting. So, what did I say? Oh, because because they offered me that production job. Like, I'm going to take a production job when I just applied for a supervisor job, and then I applied for a maintenance job. When I left my other job, I was not in production. It was maintenance. So you want me to, I don't mind starting off low. You're not going to go low, all the way to the bottom. Not when I have experience. And so after I got to thinking a little bit, right? I got to thinking. How do you get from applying for a supervisor job to applying for a maintenance job to then being told, hey, why don't you fill out an application for production? That's kind of odd, So here's what I think. Okay, for one, they reverted back to they went to the production end of it, because I'm always cynical of people, because people are not good at all. They can be evil. So my philosophy is, what happened is in the process of them talking to me and all this stuff, that's when they had the opportunity to contact the other company. It would be company A, I guess. Yeah, let's call them company A. They contacted company A, and company A talked bad about me. That's what I think, because I'm cynical of people. And what I spoke about earlier in this video demonstrates that what I feel and how I think is correct. So that's what I think. I think company A spoke to company C. So company C decided, well, let's go ahead and tell him he can keep him along. That way we don't lose face, and he probably won't apply for it. Well, I'm not going to apply for a production job. So if that's what you was thinking, you were right there. So that's what I think. I think that other company said something to him, and so then that's the reason why they got cold feet on me. Because I spoke to somebody I know who owns a business without them knowing the details of what I was talking about. I said, Do you when someone's applying for a position within your company, do you penalize them for telling you that they want to advance, that they want to be a supervisor, or whatever? And he said, absolutely not. That's what they want, those type of people to come to their company and work. No, I'm telling you, no company that has a lick of sense is going to hold that against a prospective employee. They're not going to do it. It ain't going to happen. So then I'm going to close with this. Okay? And this is going to be the kicker. Because then you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. When those people are talking to each other, there's only two people on the phone. Them and the other person. So nobody else is going to know what they're talking about. It's just them. So they can talk about whatever they want. The person that they're contacting about you could say whatever they want. And nobody's going to know. You're not going to know. Only those two people are going to know. And they're going to get that information. And so then you don't have no means. There's no way for you to counter whatever those people said. Maybe it's true. Maybe it ain't true. But whatever they said, you can't counter them. So you're doomed. Now, in closing, let me share this with you. I was talking to this lady, and she's in jobs where you gotta have financing, stuff like that. She's in that field, and she straight up told me that when she contacts people for confirmation on certain things, she said that she does not even have to ask any questions. She doesn't ask them any other questions. You want to know why? Because the people she's contacting they're already deviling up dirt on the people that she's calling about. And they're not supposed to do that. That's against the law. But I'm telling you, it happens. But don't let anybody else fool you, because it does happen. And I'm living proof of it. And what I heard the other day from that lady, that's proof too. And it's like I told her, because, you talk to people long enough, they'll start telling on themselves. And so, she says she doesn't even have to ask the dirt questions. Because the people she's calling are giving it up freely on the people that she's calling about. So when you're going out and applying for jobs and such, and you're going out and applying for loans or whatever, you can rest assured that somebody that they're calling is, if you had a beef with them somehow or another, they're talking about it. And they're telling them people what happened. Their side of it, but you're not getting to say your side. So anyways, with that being said, I'm going to sign off on here. About ready to run out of daylight. So with that being said, in closing, I want to say God bless you. God bless President Trump. And God bless the United States of America. You guys take care. Oh, yes. And love one another. Be nice to each other. Alright? Take care.